Good afternoon, this is Dr. Pradhan here. So, welcome to NPTEL project on econometric modeling. So, today we will start the introduction part of econometric modeling. So, we will basically highlight what is all about means econometric modeling and how it is very useful for our academic point of view. So, now basically we are living in a dynamic world where everything is problematic. So, we are always bounded with the various socioeconomic problems and it is very dynamic, very uncertain and totally unpredictable. But with the with these problems, so we need to have a solutions. So, that means we have to apply proper strategy how we have to tackle such type of dynamic problems. So, without having proper strategy, it is very difficult to handle various socio-economic problems. So, econometric modeling is means in this scenario econometric modeling is a very important tools to solve this particular problem. So, means it will give you guidelines or it will give you green signal what are the strategic aspects you have to apply through which you can solve this particular problems which is very volatile, very uncertain and it is totally unpredictable in nature. So, econometric modeling will give you fundamental ideas. So, how you have to solve this uncertain problem or volatile problem into stable problem or certain problems. So, this is how the beginning of this econometric modeling. So, now what is all about this econometric modeling? The core econometric modeling is divided into two parts. Okay. So, it is divided into two parts, one is called as econometrics and another is called as modeling. Okay. So, let me first before I highlight the econometrics and modeling. So, what is my core agenda here? The core agenda of econometric modeling is to fit data into a particular problem. So, that is we need to have fit means best fit, best structure of data into that particular problem. So, data is usually represented as a information. So, the way you will process the information, so that the problem can be solved immediately, or you can say you can transfer this uncertain problem or volatile problem to certain problem or stable problem. So, that you can wipe out that socio-economic problems. So, now to have or to fit data or to get a structure of goodness of fit is not straightforward. Okay. It is very complex problems. So, now we like to know what are these complexities. So, how to get this means how to get this best fitness of the models or you can say best fitness of the data setup. So, that we can solve the problems. So, we have various strategic issues, various strategic fundamentals, so that we can come to a particular conclusions. So, it requires huge skill setups. First things you need huge skills, huge mathematical knowledge, huge statistical knowledge and relevant softwares, because nowadays without softwares to tackle multivariate problem is very difficult, because we are always having time constraints. Okay. So, in this particular scenario, so you must be very careful. So, how with the limited resource base with respect to time, methodology, issues, setups, etc. So, we have to quickly find out a solution and within that solutions we have to get a best fitness of the particular model, and by the way that model can be used for solving your problems or you can say used for forecasting, etc. So, now I will highlight few things here. So, in our today's with this basic introduction, so today we are going to discuss these are the aspects. So, first of all, what is econometrics? So, why we know econometrics? It is a historical background and some cited examples, then econometric outputs, inputs, econometric process, then finally, the basic framework of econometric modeling and basic some of the basic knowledge about econometrics, because it should be mandatory something little bit before you go for econometric modeling. Econometric modeling is a very complex problem and it is a very difficult problem. Without knowing all such aspects or you can say basics, it is very difficult to enter to this econometric modeling. Okay. So, let me first we start with the econometrics. Okay. So, let me econometrics is a branch, you know, econometrics is a branch of science, where you can say it means in which theory and statistical methods are integrated in the analysis of numerical and institutional data. It is otherwise called as a scientific study of numerical data based on variation in natures. Okay. So, that means it is a set of information collection, summation, estimation and interpretation of you can say data. So, this is what finally one called as a econometrics aspect. Okay. Econometrics is a set of informations collection, summation, estimations and interpretation of data. So, in the case of modeling, it is a process. Okay. So, it is the integration of physical simulation and mathematical simulations. Okay. So, that means it is a process of presenting a real world object as a set of mathematical equations. Okay. So, now so we have to transfer the physical problem into mathematical problems. Okay. So, now econometrics will apply. So, whether in this transformation this modeling is perfectly okay or not. So, that is how econometrics play a big role. So, econometrics means you know, modeling you will transfer the real world problem into mathematical form of the equation. So, that means it will build a mathematical form of the model, and econometrics will you know enter to that particular aspect and investigate whether that problem is perfectly okay or not. So, the way it will be investigated, that is the structure of econometrics. Okay. So, econometrics altogether it is you know divided into 4 aspects. It is the you know integration of 4 different papers altogether. It is called as a starting with economics, you know, then finance, then mathematics, then statistics. Okay, statistics. So, economics is the principle of consumption, distribution and wealth management. Okay. So, it is the branch of social science which is concerned with the principle of consumption, principle of you can say principle of production, consumption and distribution, wealth and their management. So, this is what the economics all about. Similarly, in finance, it is the branch of economics that studies the management of money and other assets. So, now means finance is the root from economics. So, economics is the bigger concept where we are studying the principle of production, consumption, distribution of wealth and their management. So, for finance is a part of it, is the branch of economics that studies the management of money and other assets. Okay. So, similarly, so we can define the term mathematics. It is a branch of science dealing with a logic of quantities, shape and its arrangements. Okay. Similarly, statistics we can define branch of science where we can plan, gather, analyze information about a particular collection of individuals or object under considerations. Okay. So, this is how the structure of you know econometrics. So, that means econometrics is the a cluster of economics, finance, mathematics and statistics. There are many ways we can integrate all these things, because nowadays it has just spread in many areas, but all together. So, in fact, it is the means in brief we can show that it is the integration of economics problem, finance problem, mathematics use and statistic use. So, we use mathematics and statistics how to solve the socio-economic problems or financial problem. That is what the agenda of this econometric modeling. Okay. So, now very quickly I will highlight here once again what is all about this econometrics. So, then you see here. So, altogether, so econometrics is a branch of these 4 heads. So, this is the clusters which we call is a econometrics. So, this is you can say economics, then this is finance, then this is math and this is stat. Okay. So, the cluster we will call as a econometrics. Okay. So, that is why I can analyze here. It is a set of procedures and rules for reducing large masses of data into manageable proportions allowing us to draw conclusions from those data. Okay. So, this is the fact of you know I have very strictly mentioned in the beginning that econometric modeling is the basic core agenda is means core objective is to fit the data, and that should be very structured, very reliable, very accurate. So, the way we will fit the data, that is what the speciality of econometrics. So, that is what the definition is also talks about. So, in short, it is the application of statistical methods to socio-economic data, that is nothing but socio-economic problems. So, under it may be purely social problem, it may be purely economics problems, and it may be purely financial problem, that is coming under all socio-economic issues. So, there are various definitions, many definitions we have to interpret the econometrics. So, it is not possible to analyze all these definitions here. So, I am straightforward, I am giving one definition here. Econometrics may be defined as the social science in which the tool of economic theory, mathematics, statistical inference are applied to the analysis of economic problem. So, this is how the broad definition of this econometrics. Okay. Now, come to this why economics, why you know econometrics. In fact, we have already discussed why we know econometrics, because we are in the dynamic world where all problems are very uncertain in nature, very problematic, very complex. So, we need proper models where through which we can apply proper strategy and to tackle that problem. So, economics come forward to solve all these issues. So, that means it will give you the best fit models through which you can apply proper strategy and you can solve your particular problems. Okay. So, econometric is used to test and refine the existing theory. Okay. So, that means I have very briefly mentioned that so far as econometric modeling is concerned, it is a application oriented subjects. So, you must have a proper theory, and with it within the particular theory you have to bring objective specification, hypothesis specification, model formulation. Then our idea is your econometric idea is whether this particular model physical transformation to mathematical transformation is perfectly okay or not. So, how it is consistent with the theory, that is how the econometrics play a fantastic role or key roles. Okay. It is very useful as the existing theory may be very confusing in nature because of various factors like policy change, some of the unnecessary means not countable factors like earthquake, terrorist attack, etc. Okay. Econometrics can evaluate the program which is useful for various stakeholders in that society, because once you set the problem, suppose I have a problem. So, I need to fit a model, so through which I can make a prediction and you can say solve my problem, but ultimately that model can be used by other people, other stakeholders. So, that it will be multiple use. Okay. So, econometrics is not a one it is not one man's utility, it is a multi man's utility. So, it is very, that is why its importance is much higher than the other subjects. Okay. So, econometrics analysis is very valuable to decision makers. So, actually since it is the question of fitting the data into a proper structures. So, so far as the data is concerned, there are many ways we have to classify the data structure. Sometimes it is called as a one way which I like to highlight here, experimental data and non-experimental data. Here experimental data are very rare in various socio-economic problems. So, that is why econometrics is very handy to handle non-experimental data and observational data to make the inferences. Okay. So, that is very important fact in the case of econometrics modeling. It is applicable to apply any theory provided the real world data must be very supportive. Okay. One of the interesting, because the starting point of econometrics which I have mentioned, the core agenda is that fitting data into a proper structures. So, if data is not there, then econometric is handicapped. Econometrician will be very handy, very helpful if you have a theory, consistent theory, and you have a consistent information. So, then they will use this information in the theories and they can predict you or they can give you better strategy how you have to go in futures. Okay. So, if something is missing, then obviously econometrics is meaningless. So, econometrics requires entering of econometrics require proper theory and proper information. Without, if anything is missing in the process, then econometric is meaningless. So, we need consistent theory, we need consistent informations. So, econometric will give basic two inputs. One is how strategic skill power you have, how you have to handle, and what are the techniques available, and how you are integrating the system to get a particular answers. Okay. So, the use of econometrics, there are many use in fact. So, other uses are it is useful in financial market, capital markets, product market, factor market, wherever there is a problem. So, you apply this model, then you get to know how you have to fit the data, and that will give you idea or strategy, how you have to apply strategy for your future direction. That is how the you can say structure of econometric modeling. So, modeling long term relationship between price exchange rates, then more determinants of bond credit ratings, then forecasting volatility of bond returns, or you can say capital asset pricing models. These are the most of the applications where you means I am just giving you some kind of examples here, but in reality it may be useful for many cases. Most of the cases, 99% cases, whatever problems you have, you can apply the econometrics. So, that is why it is a very handy subject and very interesting subjects. Okay. Similarly, these are all other options how you have to means I am talking about you can apply in the stock market, etc. So, anyway, so now so you get to know what is all about econometrics and why you know econometrics. Then finally, we will just get to know what is its background, how it is coming into these pictures. Okay. So, historically econometrics started with the foundation of Econometric Society in 1931 and Culls Commission's research in 1932. So, so from 1931 onwards econometrics play major roles. In fact, in the mid of 1960 the rule of econometrics is very at the higher rate, and right now in this particular era, globalization era, the use of econometric modeling is at a greater at the highest levels. Without using econometric modeling, it is very difficult to go for any forecasting or any policy matters. Okay. So, econometrics is very useful. So, that is why you need to have information about econometric knowledge. Without econometric knowledge or without econometric modeling, so it is very difficult to go for any policy policy discussion or policy use. Okay. It is very difficult. Yes. So, by the way you can get to know here, so what is the utility and usefulness of econometrics. So, it is started in the year 1931, but purely to solve socio-economic problems, that too mostly on economic related problem and financial related problem. So, this is what we call it in the social science, but it has a many application in other areas like in the physical science also. So, like biometrics, technometrics, sociometrics, anthropometrics, plyometrics, geometrics, these are the applications where now econometrics is applied. You see, econometrics is a supporting subject, you just bring some theory. So, any branch of science, you see chemical engineering, civil engineering or mechanical engineering, you bring theory. Okay. So, then econometric is just like a tool. Okay. So, it will see how theory is there. So, what type of information you need, then we have to either you have to test some theory or we have to redesign the theory, re-estimate the theory, so that we can bring something new. Okay. Or we can use in a more strategic way, more better way for policy matter, or you can say future predictions. Okay. So, this is how the econometric all about. So, there are certain I will cite here few examples what is all about econometrics structure altogether. Okay. So, now be careful here. So, I will put a model here C equal to A plus B y. Okay. So, this is what we have brought from the theory of Keynesian consumption functions. Okay. Keynesian consumption function. So, C stands for consumptions and y stands for income and a b are parameters which are supporting. So, that means the theory says that C is a function of y. So, this is how the theory, that means so how you have to justify whether there is this theory has a fact or meaningful interpretation or not. So, statistic has to play. So, there are suppose I start with the concept like a consumption as a function of income. So, that means a consumption if you dependent variable. So, it depends upon y income levels. So, your consumption level will depends upon your income levels. Okay. So, now whether this relationship is very positive or it is significant. So, that econometrics will help you in better. So, I have put the mathematical equation C equal to A plus B y, C equal to A plus B y. Okay. So, let us means what is all econometric modeling. So, now this is mathematical form of the model. So, I will in implicit format I will put it in explicit format here C equal to A plus B y. So, this is called as a mathematical form of the models. Okay. So, now what I will do, So, I will transfer this model into statistical form of the model. So the moment I will transfer into statistical form of the model, so the model will be rewritten like a plus b y plus u. Okay. So, that means initially there are two parts, this is part 1, this is part 2. So, this is dependent cluster, this is independent cluster, that too this is supporting component and this is the main component. Okay. So, now now once you will transfer into statistical form of the model, statistical model, then it has a 3 parts. Okay. So, this is dependent cluster, this is independent cluster and this is error clusters. Okay. So, we will get to know details when we will move into a direct econometric problems. So, after a couple of lectures means basic of all econometrics knowledge, then we will move to that pure econometric model. So, how we will start and how we have to end with the particular issues. So, now in this particular setup, so you have consumption equations. So, C is here consumptions, then it is function of income. So, here A and B are the supporting components. So, now what is the main agenda of econometrics is that, so every time, so that is how it is called as a one type of exploration. Okay. So, what you have to do here, so every times, that means here u is in a hidden natures. Okay. It is in a hidden. So, that means some of the missing components are there. So, is it possible to find out what are the hidden components are there? So, this is one means this is give you a signal for search. Okay. It will give you a search. If not, then first of all you have to find out what is the error term. So, what is the contribution of error? Is it 0 or is it something greater than 0? Okay. So, there are two aspects in fact. So, what is the error contribution? So, the model will be best fitted if consider you can consider as the best models if the error will be at the minimum level. So, if you will say 0, then obviously it will be perfectly fit models. So, now in most of the cases, because it is a simple model, so because consumption is a function of income only, but consumption depends upon so many other factors in fact. Similarly, any problems you take, let us say price and quantity relationship. So, quantity dependent function of price. So, it does not mean that quantity always depends upon price, there are certain other factors are there. Just like stock price, stock price depends upon, you can say, market news. So, there are several other factors like business condition, inflation, exchange rate, so many things are there. So, these are the factors which can influence stock price. So, we like to know, first of all here the idea is, so you have to identify the particular problem from that particular theory. What is the main variable, instrumental variable? So, that will that we will declare as a core variables and we call it a dependent variable. Then others are the, you can say, supporting variables. So, how these supporting variables are, you can say, influencing the core value, that is one way of econometric modeling. But I will clarify one thing you, that when you will enter to the econometric modeling, there are various types of structures you will find. Basically, the entire structure are classified into 4 different games. So, one is purely cross sectional modeling, then there is a time series modeling, then penal data modeling and structural equation modeling. So, structural equation modeling is a completely one part of the game, and other time series modeling means cross sectional modeling, penal data modeling another part of the problem. So, means what I like to say, so there are two different games altogether in the econometric system. So, one systems, it is a one way classification and another is a multi-way classification. One way classification, I mean, so it is the every time there is one dependent variable with one independent or multiple independent variables. Okay. So, this is one system in where means it is this particular structure, it is called as a one way causality. Okay. So, basically this econometric modeling is the mostly on causality issues. Okay. So, means causality is very important in this particular framework of econometric modeling. So, now in this particular particular system, first systems, so we assume that there is always one dependent variables and one independent or several independent variables. So, we like to know how these independent variables are influencing, you can say, dependent variable, that is the structure of causality. Okay. So, now in the second structures, So, we have series of dependent variables or we have a series of independent variables. I get to know what is this dependent independent variables, means in a particular equation the left side will call is a dependent and right side will call is a independent variables. Okay. So, now here this structure is that, so you have to see, so how many are in the dependent and how many are in the independent side. So, most of the cases you will find one dependent with the multiple independent. So, another case multiple dependent and multiple independent. So, if that is the structure, then we have a different problem called as simultaneous equation modeling and structural equation modeling. In other cases, so we have the system called as a one way causality. So, that is one dependent variable with multiple independent variables. Okay. So, this is how the system all about. Okay. So, now means these are all basic examples. So, what all together? So, we have three different setup altogether, dependent setup, independent setup, and to justify that once we have a error setup. In fact, we have a different games for error component, we have a different game our dependent and independent. So, we get to know details when we will enter to this pure econometric modeling. So, in the beginning we should be very careful that, so we are in the core objective, that is our dependent structure. So, this is main. Okay. So, then others are, you can say, just supporting factors. Okay. So, these are all instrumentals through which how the objective can be achieved. Okay. So, this is the core fundamental knowledge of econometrics. Okay. So, I have just highlighted here consumption models, similarly capital asset pricing models. So, how this risk free rate and market premium will influence this asset value. So, that is can be discussed in details. Okay. We will discuss details when we will go to the analysis first. Okay. So, now econometrics altogether, just like in the system of business or productions. So, we have input and we have output. So, we have to process inputs, we will get the outputs. So, econometrics is just like a technical process. Okay. So, it is a technical or mechanical process. So, we need to insert inputs, then we will come out with the output to take, because there are two ways we have to handle this type of structures. As usual, recently we have a multi numbers of softwares, statistical software through which we have to solve this problem. But we can go for manually also. Manually there is a systematic structure how you have to process these inputs and how you will get out the outputs. That means you should know what should be your output level. So, output classification is very important, and at the same time input classification is very important. So, the thing is that means output classification means that is your objective specification, what is your exact objective. So, means tentatively your objective is very much you can say known to you. So, now what you have to do? So, you have to process the inputs, whether your tentative objective is obtained or not obtained. Okay. If it is not obtaining, then what is the difficulty and why it is not obtaining, or whether there is any way to redesign or restructure till you get your objective, or you can say whatever analysis you are getting, accordingly you have to change your objective setup. Okay. So, this is how econometrics will give you signals, means it is just like it is a very strategic subject. Okay. It is a very strategic subject, it will give you means very dynamic knowledge for various problems. So, how means it will design, redesign, structure, restructure, till you get a best models, so through which you can solve your problems carefully. Okay. Perfectly. Okay. That is how it is called econometrics. So, now you see here in the econometrics there are two groups of things. One is called as a output side, another side is called as a input side. So, in the output sides we need estimation, that is measurement, inference, hypothesis testings, then forecasting, predictions, then evaluation, assessment. So, these are things we have to do in this output side. That means, these are our objective core agenda here. Okay. So, we need to estimate, measurement, inference, hypothesis testing. That means, whatever objective specification is there. So, we have to test it properly, means as per the hypothesis construction hypothesis. That means, the structure is that first you have a theory, that is what we will generate, means from the theory you have to identify a particular problem. So, now once you have a problem, so you have to set a hypothesis. That means, the objective has to be constructed in the form of a hypothesis. That means, the way you are transferring objective to hypothesis, that means it is the give you theoretical knowledge about the mathematical transformation into statistical transformation. Hypothesis testing means this, it is a statement which is not verified, which is to be verified. Okay. So, that means in which is to be verified means it will be use of statistics only. So, a statistic will verify these ones. Okay. So, it will means it is the econometrics job is to verify the fact whether it is okay or not okay. Okay. So, these are the outputs means objective specification, how we will achieve this particular items, but we do not have any idea about the input specification. Okay. So, input specification here you see, you must have a theoretical knowledge for when sound theory behind this modeling. Without having sound theory and idea, so it is totally unnecessary to enter to the econometric modeling. Okay. Because without theory the econometric is totally meaningless, Okay. So, now so theory is the most, then mathematical knowledge, you must have a sound mathematical knowledge, you must have sound statistical knowledge, then you must have a information. Okay. So, theory problem will give you, but sometimes information will not give you. So, information you have to generate, sometimes it may be readily available, you bring that information, or it is not readily available, you create or you have to means creation means either it is somewhere possible to create, or sometimes even artificial creation you can create, like there is a technique called as a dummy variable modeling. So, we will get to know when we will enter to that particular problem. Okay. So, data or information is the most, then computing powers. Okay. So, means it is not every time your hand is okay, or you can see your brain power is always okay. Suppose when you are handling huge setup of data or huge number of variables, and that too you can say take a case of problem, say structural equation modeling, it is very difficult to handle in a hand. Okay. Particularly if your problem is very big and very means too much multivariate in nature, then that time it is very difficult to solve in a classrooms. Yes, you can solve this problem in the classroom, provided I will give you support, that is what it is called as a softwares. Okay. So, we will call it as a computing power. Computing power means we have a statistical software through which we have to just operate it properly. The programs are designed in such a way. So, it will give you means you give just input command, you process the inputs, then automatically output will comes. Okay. So, that is how its computing power is all about. So, and then once you get the computation means computation is over, then you have a model result. So, then you have to interpret, then you have to check with you can say your existing theory. So, interpretation, then knowledge must be required, how you have to interpret and how you have to integrate with the proper theory. Okay. You see here econometric process is altogether two men's it's two men's job. So, one is called as a deterministic models, another is called as a statistical model. I have already mentioned. So, econometry starting with question of mathematical form theory, then the theory will be transferred into mathematical form of the model, then mathematical form of the model will be transferred into statistical form of the models. Okay. So, that is how econometric modeling, because I have means very beginning I have mentioned econometric modeling is nothing but the integration of econometrics and modeling. So, modeling will give you the signal of physical transformation to mathematical transformation, and econometrics will see whether this transformation is perfectly okay or not okay. So, it will give you a commands type of job. So, you have to check yourself whether you are in the right track. Okay. So, the way we will move in the process. So, I have just represented here in the technically. So, now what is the core foundation here? See, because you see I mentioned here economics, finance and mathematics and statistics. Okay. But generally econometrics, mathematical statistics is the main core elements, and economics, finance they will give you the theoretical funda only. Okay. So, theoretical funda, or you can say mathematical formulation of the models, but means mathematical formulation of models you will design through the mathematical knowledge only, but economics and finance will give you perfect fundamental theory. So, through the theory you have to apply your mathematical knowledge and transfer this theory into mathematical form of the model, then ultimately you have to apply the statistic to investigate the problem, so that the theory can be tested, or you can say retested, redesigned as per the need of the stakeholders. Okay. So, basically, so theory, from the theory you have the deterministic models. Okay. Then that is mathematical theory, then you have this apply the statistical theory, then deterministic model will be transferred into statistical form of the model. That means, you see here, when there is a theory here, so then we have to apply mathematics to transfer this theory into deterministic model, that we will call it a mathematical form of model. Then you have to apply the statistics, then these deterministic models will transfer into statistical form of the models. Okay. That means, its statistical application is applied to the mathematical. So, the mathematical form of the model will transfer into statistical form of the model. Then once you will transfer the statistical form of the model, so then you need to verify. Okay. So, as I have already mentioned, so when we will put into statistical form of the model, so this is what the transformation here. This is mathematical form of the model, and this is statistical form of the model. So, I will write it here once again. So, C equal to A plus B y simply. So, I will write it here C equal to A plus B y plus U. Okay. U is said as a error component. Okay. Error component. So, because what is mean by verification? Verification means something is not 100% correct. Okay. So, we need to check whether it is 100% correct or not correct. So, now error, let us assume that this is not 100% correct, that is why we are starting with the error component. We are saying that 100% not correct. So, that means some percentage is lacking. So, that some percentage lacking is something nothing but u here. Okay. So, now we have to see what is the u value. Ultimately, if the u value is minimum or 0, then this is fact, this model is perfectly okay. So, that is our. So, if u is something positive, then obviously, this model is not perfectly okay. So, that is what the econometrics will teach you. Okay. So, now this is statistical form of the model, then statistical form of the model transfer into data, means we have to process the data with the computing power, then finally, we will get the estimated model. So, once you will get the estimated model, then obviously, this estimated model has to be checked, or you can say investigated properly through some tests, okay, statistical tests. So, we get to know details when we will go to the particular process. Generally, these tests are you can say three in natures. One is called as a goodness fit test, specification test, and out of sample prediction test, that is called as a DG test. Okay. So, now we like to first have the estimated model, then that part is called as a reliability checking. So, for the reliability checking concern, then these three test has to be taken care of. Okay. So, through the again econometrics, then finally, you have to find out the inference. Okay. So, whether this model is a perfectly reliable one, or your fit of the data is a structured one or not structured. If it is reliable, then it will be structured. If it is not reliable, then it means reliable test will not give you signal, green signal, then it is unstructured data. So, you have to again redesign, reprocess till you get the structured fit. Okay. So, the structured fit means it is correctly specified, and that can be used for, you can say, prediction and forecasting. So, with the help of once you get the a proper reliable model or best fitted models, then obviously, that has to be tested the hypothesis, and finally, you have to give a conclusion. So, how you have gone through altogether. So, okay. So, similarly, econometric technology. So, there is a need of information. Information is most, because it is three parts: theory, then techniques, then information, that is what is called as a data. So, that means econometrics altogether, it is the cluster of theory, information and techniques, theory, information and techniques, theory, data and techniques or tools. Okay. So, these three components are very important. That means, it is three fundamental issue is very important: theory, okay, then informations, then theory, information, then techniques. Okay, techniques. Okay. So, then you have to apply the your mind power, okay, your skill, okay, how you have to apply or process this theory information to consistent the theory, and how technique you have to apply to justify the theory. Okay. Then collection, summation, estimation and interpretation. What is means what is all about the econometrics. Okay, econometrics, it is the set of information collection, summation, estimation and interpretation. So, this is somewhat we can call as statistics, but here only econometrics, the extra part is you can say theory. Okay, theory is the most. Okay, it's that is why it is not purely statistics. Okay. So, it is the majority part is 90% activities is statistics, but 10% must be consistent with the theory. So, that theory is very important, means 10% theory is very important so far as econometrics is concerned. Okay. So, as I have mentioned here, very means just like I have already mentioned here. So, far as econometric modeling is concerned, so we assume that this model is not deterministic, it is it is in the form of some error involvement. So, there are three specific components here. So, first thing when we will put here you can say C equal to A plus B y plus E, okay, B y plus E. So, now we start with the C equal to A plus B y, and ultimately we transfer to A plus B y plus u. So, now the obviously the question is why u, okay, why error term is always there. There are many reasons, that is how I have mentioned here why errors. First things, there are lots of omitted variables. So, for instance, C equal to function, C is a function of y here. So, that means consumption is a function of income, but do you think that consumption is always only variable which can influence by income? So, it is obviously the answer is not. Okay. So, there are certain other variables which can influence the consumption, current consumption. Say instead of putting C like this way, I can put here C t equal to A plus B y. The current consumption level depends upon current income. In fact, current consumption may be depend upon past income. Okay. So, that is current consumption may be depends upon your needs. Okay. So, that is how some of the factor which cannot be. So, it is not possible to capture. Sometimes it is possible, but you are not interested for because of some reasons. Anyway, whatever may be the case. So, these are the reasons why error terms are always there. So, okay. So, that means if I will specifically highlight, then obviously why errors means it is omitted variables cases, because we are omitting few variables which may be relevant, may not be relevant. Means omission of variables means some of the variables, relevant variables we are not including for different reasons, and some of the sometimes unnecessary variable you are also including. Initially you may not have idea, but when we will go for modeling process, you get to know whether it is perfectly okay or not. Okay. So, then second is the measurement error in the independent variables. Okay. So, because the some of the independent variables may not be correctly specified. So, if it is not correctly specified, then obviously the model may not be correctly specified. So, if model for that we assume that there is some error component, means whatever problems we cannot capture. So, that will take care by error terms. Okay. So, similarly last but not the least cause is the randomness of human behavior. For instance, we like to know the relationship between C and Y. So, we have C information and we have Y information. So, we like to correlate C and Y. By any chance, suppose I am just entering data. Okay. So, instead of 30 I will put 300, instead of 40 I will put 42. So, like that way there may be human error. So, in that mistakes, if it is a severe mistake, then obviously the model will give you rough results. So, that is how it is a continuous process, redesign, redesign till you get a best fitter model. If it is not coming perfectly okay, then obviously you have to go continuously back till you get a fault where is exactly your problem. So, by the way you have to explore and accordingly you have to sort out its solution. Okay. Yes, there are live examples here. Basically the game is between deterministic model with econometric model. So, deterministic model is purely a straightforward concept, econometric modeling is a complex process. Okay. We are assuming that something not straightforward, like means it is game between we mathematically we can call it in linear versus non-linear. Linear means it is a very straightforward, non-linear means it is not straightforward, in between there is lots of hidden factors in nature. So, econometrics, one of the core agenda what I have mentioned, that to fit a data in a proper structure, and second core agenda is to explore the hidden information. So, what is the hidden information which can you can say which is very much obstacle to your modeling scenario, or which may not be perfectly you can say not scheduled. So, you have to be very careful how you have to investigate. So, now you see here live example, there is a price versus quantity, then production means output versus inputs, then wage equation, wage the productivity versus its determinants, then Phillips curves, which is the game between money wage rate and unemployment rate. So, it is inflation issue. So, Wagner's law, then government expenditure, then national income, these are the things, means these are all you can say these are all purely theoretical base. Okay. This is a theoretical model. So, we have a theoretical base. So, through the price quantity, that means theory says that there is some relationship between price and quantity. So, we will assume that quantity is a function of price. Okay. So, may be linear, may be non-linear. So, we means whether the relationship, there is a relationship, if there is a relationship, whether it is linear or non-linear, whether it is you can say in a deterministic trend or econometric trend. So, that we have to know once you have a information, with the basis of information we have to check the setup, accordingly we have to come means we have to fit the data, so that we can come to a better structure, better feasibility. Okay. So, similarly, in the production every times what you have to do, so you need information, that is you can say econometric inputs, and ultimately your according to your objective specification we have to process, you have to collect, or you have to design till you get the objective means verification of your objective. So, once your objective is done, then obviously your process is done. So, with respect to particular objective, you have to process your inputs very carefully, so that you will have the objective done. Okay. Yes. So, I have analyzed here properly. One thing here is that you need three things in the econometric setup. One is consistent theory, information, that is data, and tools and techniques, that is you have to derive from mathematics and statistics. Okay. So, theory, information, and techniques. So, theory, information and techniques, three things I have already highlighted here. So, theory, information and techniques, these three things are very important for econometric modeling. So, now so far as information, I am just tracking one thing. So, we will get to know lots of things about the techniques. Obviously, theory is must, then we information techniques will be ultimate game. Okay. So, these are the instrument we have to play with this theory. So, techniques we will not touch today anything about techniques, we will get to know details in the coming classes. So, information basically in the quantity term, technical term is called as a data. So, data basically divided into three forms. Okay. So, the structure of data, first thing it may be experimental, it may be non-experimental, it may be quantitative, it may be qualitative, but if it is a qualitative structure, then the setup is completely different. So, what I like to say, so in the beginning we like to handle so quantitative setup of data, then we will see how qualitative setup data will means how do we solve the or handle the qualitative setup of data in the econometric modeling. So, far as the quantitative data is concerned, so we have three way of collections, or we have three way of collecting the means combining the information. So, then one is called as a time series setting, that means data or information available over the time frame. Okay. So, this is called as a time series modeling, means time series data. So, then another is called as a cross sectional data. Cross sectional data is a data or information collected over the sample units, okay, cross sectional units. For instance, population across the countries, say USA, UK, India, etc. This is called as a cross sectional data. And with respect to India, what is the population of India over the period, say 1981, 1991, 2001, this is called as a means stock price for various years, say 2001, 2002, 2003, like this way. So, this is called as a time series representation. And finally, there is called as a panel data. Panel data is the combination of combination of time series data and cross sectional data. Okay. So, the speciality of panel data is that it will increase the sample size, okay, because so far as econometric modeling is concerned, you have a theory, then you have to build a model, then you have to apply statistics to investigate whether the theory model is perfectly okay. For that you need information, then you have to process. So, information is very important, and that too huge information you need. So, in that case we call it a sample size. Okay. So, sample size should be substantially very high in the case of, you can say, econometric modeling. Higher the sample size, higher is the model accuracy. Okay. Lower the sample size, lower is the model accuracy. So, you have a substantially a high sample size, so that you can justify your model fitness in more perfect way, more structured way. So, panel data will give you green signal how you have to increase the sample size. Sometimes some of the problem if you purely in cross sectional way, and that information is very limited in nature. Sometimes some of the information is purely time series in nature, and that too is very limited in nature. So, now if we will club these two, then obviously we will increase the sample size, and that will be very handy for the econometrician to verify a particular theory. Okay. So, then these are all various variables. It can be available through cross sectional unit, it can be available through time series unit. Then it may be first available time series and cross sectional. Panel data you will artificially create the panel data setup. Okay. So, sometimes data may be day wise, monthly wise, quarterly, annually, weekly, so many ways you have to, you can say, see on the structure of data. So, that means we get to know the details about the econometric modeling. So, what is the definition, what is its utility, then how, what are its applications, then what is the core agenda, what are the objectives, what is the historical issues behind econometric modeling, then proper structure of econometric modeling, then basic themes, that too specifically the modeling rules, and the structure of data, etc. So, with this basic introduction, so I am very sure you get to know little bit about what is all about econometrics and how it is important or relevant in the current business environment. Okay. So, we means what my suggestion is that it is very useful subject, very interesting subject, very relevant subject. So, that it has a broad futures of academicians and policy makers. Without having econometrics, it is very difficult to handle so many big problems and big issues. So, econometrics, to learning econometrics is most, and it is very essential and very useful. So, we just highlighted what are the basic issues and how interesting this particular subject, and what are the entry point of econometrics modeling. So, what is the what are the requirements you need to have, so that econometric modeling can be applied properly and to justify or to integrate the problem setup, etc. So, with this we can conclude this particular sessions here. So, thank you very much, have a nice day.